Welcome, my friend Michelle.
Thank you.
So this is our April edition of the Thrive Together Masterclass podcast. And we pick a success habit every month. And the month of April success habit is be open. And as soon as we made our list for the year, and then we started to look at, all right, who do we want to have be our guests to talk to us about this? Michelle Spalding was the first person who came to mind to talk about the subject of be open. So I can't wait for everyone to hear the anecdotes, the stories, the challenges, the tactics that you have encompassed in your journey to be able to listen, observe, listen, be open to then and meet the challenges and make decisions because you have been through changes in your life and your business. So michellespalding.com is where people can see about you. I know you as the owner of a transaction coordination company at one time, the developer and author, founder of the Transaction Coordinator Academy, the author of 3 books.
3. Yeah.
I'm sure that's not the end of the line. And now a coach to entrepreneurs, particularly coaches, healers, therapists.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the business that you have today.
Thanks so much for asking. And it is a delight to chat with you. You know, I hope you don't mind, but I just remember the first time you reached out to me. It feels like a million years ago, definitely many lifetimes ago.
Yes.
But just how warm and gracious and just curious you were about what I did. And so I appreciate that. And I love that we've had, this great relationship all those years. What is it that I do? I will just say I've always been a helper. And so whatever it is that I do really just involves and has always involved ever since I started my first business back in 2005, helping people.
Okay.
And so currently that looks like helping coaches, as you mentioned, therapists, small solopreneurs in navigating some of the challenges that they have, and hopefully avoiding burnout in the process.
Thank you. And there are other avenues, right, that I know that you explore around what that looks like in terms of support. So we can weave that into this conversation. But to open for the topic, what does being open mean to you?
In the context of real estate and the real estate industry, because I know those are your folks, let me tell you a quick story about a rooster. And the story is of a sales agent. I was a client, his sales manager and him were a client of mine many, many years ago in my TC business. And the agent had done everything everyone is told to do in real estate. Where does the buyer want to live? What number of bedrooms, bathrooms, like all the thing, right? The typical list. And every time he took the buyer out, the buyer's wife would say, no, this one's not right. And this buyer's agent had shown him, he said just about every house in their particular town. So the sales manager said, how about I go along with you the next time you show them the houses. And he did. And he watched the wife in the kitchen. And in the kitchen, the wife was looking around. The husband was off in the backyard, taking all that in the garage, everything. Came back to the kitchen, met up with the wife, and asked her what she thought. And she said, no, this one won't work either. So the sales manager got curious. And he was open to hearing basically anything. And asked her, so tell us a little bit more. What's not going to work? She said, I have a very large rooster that must be displayed in the kitchen. It was my mother's. She gave it to me. It was her mother's. She gave it to her. I don't see a space in this kitchen for my rooster. And it was like the thing that had to happen. But that buyer's agent had never asked. So all that to be said, they went back to the drawing board. They looked at some of the houses. The sales manager went along and just said, what if y'all did this? made one small change, made a suggestion, closed a deal. And I think that that's one of the things that being open in real estate that is just essential. Being open to like some other reason other than the
Yeah.
number of bedrooms, baths, school district, etc., that would make a buyer not want to move forward on a house.
It's the rooster. You have to
It is the
have a
rooster.
place for the
Yeah.
rooster.
Yeah. And to a lot of us, maybe this was their first home purchase. They couldn't see beyond the things that were there.
Yes.
But the sales agent and the sales manager, I should say, had been around a while and he
Mm-hmm.
knew what could be done. Yeah, that was my being open.
That's wonderful. And it does remind me, as an aside, I think in my family it was a chicken, however, and not a rooster,
How funny.
that I had lost track of in the many years between being a little kid and caring for my mother at the end of her life,
Yeah.
which many, many decades had gone by. And when we were cleaning out the house, my sister cleaned out the attic and put some things out on a table. And I walked in the room and said, "The chicken, there's the chicken."
It's the chicken.
The chicken and a nutcracker that I had not seen in many decades. The nutcracker I had actually tried to replace many times online, but it was outrageously expensive. And there they were. They had been in the attic the whole time. I said, "My sister, are these yours?" And she said, "No." I said, "Oh, they're mine."
Yeah, that's so sweet.
Right. So
Yeah.
the little traditions, right? Because that chicken, like this woman's rooster, were always in the kitchen. And
Yeah,
so then
and
what are
it's
those
very
things, right,
important.
that we want to be curious about, to be open, to be able to understand each other? Because there
Yeah.
are these little idiosyncrasies that people have that are special.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Um, so I am also, if I can take you back in time to when you had your TC company.
Mhm.
And, that is the first connection that we made. I don't remember how I learned about your book. I don't remember the chicken or the egg on that one. If I learned about your book and reached out to you, or I was taught to reach out to you and then you taught me about your book. I'm not sure which happened, but I referred to your book many times. Remind me of the title.
The road from contract to close.
And I have recommended it endlessly. I still recommend it, The Road from Contract to Close,
Thank you.
because it had so many wonderful questions throughout the flow of a transaction for people to ask, to really be able to be in charge of, okay, where are we? Not making an assumption. When are we cleared to close? Like, have they signed the paperwork? Have they been in? Is there anything else you need? As opposed to, are we all good? Right? Like,
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you.
yes, it was and is so helpful. The technology and things may have changed, but those questions have not changed.
Yeah.
Right. I want to say that's chapter 5, because I always kept a bookmark in it to be able to open it at any moment in a coaching call.
I love that you know that because I don't.
Right. So, in your experience, how does an open mindset make a difference in a real estate career?
Mm. How does an open mindset make a difference in a real estate career? Well, I
Well,
do
for an
feel
admin
like,
or an agent, we've talked about the rooster story for the agent, but
yeah,
what about for
yeah.
an admin who also needs to have an open mindset, a TC?
Well, yeah, I think it's being willing to listen to, I think it all kind of being open to me means being listening to others and not just listening to respond, but listening to really and truly hear. I think as a leader, being open in real estate means you are uh, sharing information, even if it's not the pretty information. And what I
Yes,
mean by that is, like, I remember at the very beginning of the pandemic, when the world, March 2020, the world's going to shut down for 2 weeks.
right.
I remember saying to my team at the time, I still had my TC business, I don't know if this is going to be like January or if this is going to be like 2008, but it's definitely not going to be normal.
Right.
But I'm here, right? Like I couldn't paint it with pink paint and hope for the best for them. They have families to feed. All of us didn't realize what was going to happen. None of us even anticipated what ended up happening. But I
Right.
think being open was just being willing to um, share my vulnerabilities with my team so that it was a safe space for them to share theirs. And we got through it.
I love that. And I also, during that time, our coaching business at Cambium really was in high demand because everyone went home and people didn't know how to work together and not be in the office. It was one thing if they had a remote partner, another part of the world, they were used to that part, but they weren't used to how are we going to set up a listing or how are we going to know the status of a project. And so I also found that be open was about asking good questions. What does it take for you to do this? What do you need from me? Right? So this
Mm,
whole curiosity piece is so woven into this topic about be open.
yeah,
Because if we're not asking the questions or sharing that experience, then we're really working from a personal perspective only, and we're
yeah.
working otherwise from assumption, or I guess from a
Well, that,
historical reference.
yeah, that's a really good point that you make. And I think that um, leaders often feel like we need to know all the answers. But over the years, I mean, there were so many changes that happened in my business. And even to this day, from client feedback, from clients saying, what about this? Or a team member, what about that?
Yes.
And some things we tried and they didn't work, and other things we went, oh, wow, this is great. Let's do this. And our clients, our other clients benefited from it. So I never pretended to know all the answers. I just tried to be open and listen, and just create a safe space. I think that's the other thing that's really a part of open is
Mm-hmm.
creating a safe place for your team members to give you feedback. So many times I've had friends and colleagues that have said they're told this is an open place and you can speak, but they're punished or, frowned upon when they do.
Shunned.
I've really, really tried, and I think that that's so important to always genuinely be open and not to criticize someone who brings you something.
Agreed. And you talk about relationships. We could kind of move this into right what being open inside those relationships, whether it be with team members or clients. I was sharing with Joyce, our remote partner, this morning that the audio files inside one of our training programs came from the suggestion and request of a client who was,
Mm,
I'll say, training for her daughter's wedding, and she was walking to get fit to fit into the dress, right, that she wanted to wear. And
yeah,
she said, I want to listen to the training program, but I don't want to watch the video on my phone. Do you have audio files? And I thought, well, we just hadn't uploaded them. We just thought the video was sufficient. So we not only put in audio files in every module, we made one download of all the audios so that someone could put that on their phone or,
yeah,
device and then be able to listen while they drove or listen while they were cooking or whatever it was. But I did not understand the value of that until, right, the suggestion or request
yeah,
came. And then we were like, oh, well, we could accommodate that. That's a great idea.
yeah, yeah. And other people probably benefited from it too that had
I
just
would
never
think.
thought to ask. And I think
Yes.
that's another thing, creating that you had a great relationship with that client, so that client felt totally comfortable asking you for that.
Right, to be able to look in and see, well, what would that, right, what would that
Yeah,
be because we hadn't thought of it. And I think that's once again, right, where the leader can't think of everything. That's really not our job. Our job is to facilitate
yeah,
and then gather the strength, the wisdom, the ideas from all the people around us, which is the value of the organization, is that it really is bringing all that genius together and then letting it bubble, which also means that you're going to get ideas that are not what you are going to want to do, and you're going to get things that doesn't really fit to the mission or cost too much money or takes too much time or
mhm,
whatever it might be. But we still want to foster that relationship of being open.
yeah.
So, what ended up happening in the relationships in your TC business? Because that business has moved on. How did being open, how did you get to that decision and how did that impact those relationships?
Um, oh, that's a really good question. Truth be told, I got to that decision because I needed to do something different for myself. Um, 25 years of, making sure everything needed to happen from contract to close is in a high volume capacity
Yeah,
is can wear out a nervous system. It's a
I
lot.
believe
And then
it.
doing it as a business. So I was ready for something different. And basically, I empowered my team to all have their own individual business. It's funny because most of them said, "Oh, I can't do that." And I was like, I can show you how. And with the exception of one of them, all of them are still doing it. And I'm very proud of them. That was coming up on 4 years, 5 years, I'm sorry, ago that they all, went off and created their own with my help. So
That's
that's
wonderful.
rewarding. Yeah.
That is rewarding. And what was the chicken or the egg for you between TC Business and Transaction Coordinator Academy?
So the academy was really and truly when I wrote the book, and again, I don't remember which way that worked with you reaching out, but I had a lot of other people reach out. I wrote that book because I wanted to show real estate agents who were curious about what a TC does
Yes.
that it's a lot. It takes a whole book. And what ended up happening was people started reaching out to me and wanting to know how to do what we did. Do you coach? Do you mentor? Do you have training? And, honestly, it's an idea that I thought about years ago, but I never sat down and did it. So I hired someone and he held me accountable. He helped me build it out. I did all the recordings, obviously, all the worksheets and all the things that go into it. But he sort of held my hand. And because I paid him, uh, I had another incentive to get that completed.
Right.
And so that was launched in 2018. And it has been it's been also rewarding there to see people take what I wish was available when I started back in '05 and to just get enough to get them started, right? I don't ever profess to have everything that you need. There's nobody that can provide you that. You and I both know every transaction is totally unique and you always learn something, but it's enough to get you started. And I'm really proud that many people have been through it and have either started their own TC business or
Yeah.
work for a brokerage. And I've also had agents that have hired someone and then put their person through that training. Yeah.
Yes, it's wonderful because and there's also layers, right, of or levels of sophistication in a transaction coordinator's role
Yeah.
or the services they offer, the menu that they want to
Yeah.
provide, and the level of service that fits the business model, right, that they want to create for themselves,
Yeah.
which then is what's the right match to the right agent for that because one size doesn't fit all in that regard. So having a foundation of actually considering it a business, right? I mean, I guess for some it might be a side hustle. That's a little bit dangerous, perhaps.
I think so too.
Depending on all the deadlines, right, and all the things that you have to shepherd. And I always say to our clients, the agent, this is the part where you get paid, right? So
Yeah.
we really want to manage this well, meticulously. We want to be able to have highly technical people who know what are the forms, what are the deadlines, how do we count the days, right? So that that's really managed well. And whatever they might have for staff on the team and local, having a transaction coordinator to complement that, who really is a sound professional who has a system, right? And then you just can integrate it into your workflow is beautiful. And in my observation over the last few years, truly is the wave of the future.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
transaction coordination, including listing coordination, has incredible opportunity because of its high level of professionalism that can happen with
Mhm.
well-trained, well-positioned people. And then it has wonderful flexibility for the agent who needs it when they need it.
Yeah, yeah. It was I'll tell you, back in 2005, I wish more people had known about it. part of what I did early on, and I know part of what you even still do today in 2025 is explain to people what a TC does, how they work, how they can complement your business, as you said,
Yes.
how they can free you up to have a little more time in your day for other things, right? Not just maybe more work, but maybe other things in life, but
Yes.
also enable you to provide like this high level customer service. So you're interacting with your clients in a totally different way.
Yes. It's a soapbox I can stand on for a long time about how
Both of
valuable it
us,
is,
both of us.
right? How important that is. So in I'm interested in what you have experienced for yourself because you've had a team, right, in your TC business,
Mhm.
and now you're also a solopreneur.
Yeah.
And so, with your experience, how do you see being open fitting into how people do create collaborative teams, whatever that might look like, whether they have those people on their team or they are collaborating as a team and a solopreneur? How does be open fit into the way you also help coach people to run
Yeah.
their businesses?
Well, I would say I think we all have a very strong BS meter.
Oh,
And when it comes to sensing high levels, we have a tendency to shut down, right? The
mm,
people that are sensing someone's BS, whether it's ours or someone else's, right? We have a tendency to shut down, right? Leadership and I think collaboration requires being open and, again, not professing to know everything, but being curious about what others think, what others might be able to bring to this challenge, what others are going through. And then, I get that, like, as a leader, we have to make decisions. I used to tell my team, bring me your ideas. I'll implement what we can. We'll talk about what we can. Some of them, somebody else may have brought me, and we tried and it didn't work. Like, I will be totally honest with you. But the leader then makes the best decision that they can for the entire team moving forward. But
yeah.
when we come at it as I know it all, I got this is all mine, you just work for me, I think people shut down. I think it's important to get, I think that what I would say, let me say it this way, is to get the most from your team, you have to be open as the leader.
Yes, I would agree. And I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday about the option of having a particular function as a part of the company versus having that particular offering as a collaboration connected to the company.
Mm,
And
yeah,
I'm a big collaborator. I don't have to own it.
yeah,
I trust that once we establish this is what I need, here's the handoff, here's what you do, here's what I can promise that you do, you can promise that I do this. And if they change their mind and things change, I figure I'm going to be able to create another collaboration,
yeah.
but that I don't have to buy it, own it, control it in that way. Do you face that same challenge with the clients that you're coaching about whether or not they want to have something inside, collaborate with something? What is their openness? Because some of that control is not being open,
Yeah,
right? Everybody
yeah.
wants to own everything, as opposed to, well, what might being open provide to you?
Yes, I would say not only do my clients struggle with that, I'm sure like I do. There's a part of us as human beings that we have, I think, this false sense of security or control, right? Security when we're in control.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of things we truly can't control. And there's a lot of things we don't know. And when we collaborate with others, we are we like are opened up to something so much bigger. And
Yes.
we learn from that. And that's things we can take into the next thing and the next thing. My clients, what I would say, are often hesitant, especially solopreneurs and females specifically. It's like, no, this is my child. I started this. This is my baby, right? Like I need to do it all until I'm making or until I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I've seen people struggle on Canva for hours when someone else could do that in 15 minutes.
Right.
Um, and so I think that being open would be like realizing what your strengths are and then being open to having people to support you in places that aren't yours. And maybe Canva is something you want to learn as a hobby later on, but don't
Right.
let it take away from like your day-to-day business. Yeah.
Yes. I I want to step left a moment because you're reminding me of something that you do that helps crack people open to be open. And that is that year-end workshop that you have put
Oh,
on periodically that
yeah.
comes with a beautiful workbook, and we get together one evening and then we follow up, in 30 days, and you ask a series of questions.
Mhm.
Because I think that your philosophy and your strategy around this would be helpful in this conversation about cracking open. Like, how do you
Yeah.
get at the new perspective? And part of that is by asking yourself a series of questions. So, how did you come up with that? How do you use that?
Well, I think I have to take a step back and ask somebody, what is it that they want to feel from their business? Right? How do you want your day to feel? Not just look, because there's a lot of things we can't control,
Yeah.
but we can control a lot of times how we feel and how we can set things up to allow ourselves to feel that way. So I think that it's important to check in with that periodically as well, because while you may not hit a number or a goal, or you may exceed that goal, the most important thing I think is, how is this impacting you? How do you feel about this?
Yeah.
Um, and that's part of one of the questions on the exercise. It's also looking back when I do that, it is the end of the year. It's what worked. I think a lot of times we forget to celebrate. I know you and I
Yes.
over the years have always have gathered. And one of the things I always say is like, what are we celebrating? And most of my clients, when I first ask them that, they struggle. They'll name like one thing. Oh, I got a new client. Okay, great. What else?
Yeah.
What else? What else? We are so conditioned to look to the next thing that we forget about all the great things that we've done. And I think it's important to celebrate those and to really own those because that's what guides this feeling.
I would agree. And the celebration to what's working. I was reading something this morning that talked about helping to develop people's strengths.
Mhm.
And many years ago, when I was in human resources in another industry, there was an example given. It might have been the book, If It's Not Broke, Don't Break It, or something like that. But the concept was there was a world champion ping pong player who
Okay.
only had a forehand. He didn't need a backhand.
Gotcha.
But if he had probably been a player in our country, he might have been forced to practice his backhand because it was
Mm,
weak.
yeah.
And so, right, these are different strategies, different philosophies. One is not right and the other wrong. The idea being, though, when you look at what you are grateful for, what you want to celebrate, what's working, how do you want it to feel, these are guideposts on the way to now what do we want to create. And so the openness is from a different perspective than I don't like this. It's a complaint. It's not working, right? We're bumping our head up against a wall and
Yeah.
then trying to be open from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
So let's walk into the world of tactical and some of the innovation and technology, because the technology is really trying to take over, right? The
Yeah.
innovation. And so, one of the things that being open to new trends, being open to new tech, this must have been something right in your TC world you dealt with. It's certainly in any solopreneur's world anymore. It's in the world for you and I, right? How much do I really need a new CRM? What's wrong? Can I not keep the CRM I have now? Right?
Right,
Like
right. The one that they're not even using.
the one we're not even using to capacity. And so how is that innovation and that openness a factor in how you help people look at that or how you've looked at it for yourself?
What's the factor in how I look at that?
Well, in making
Say
those
that again,
decisions
Kathleen.
about like
I
what
got
stays
lost.
and what do we need to be open to?
I think we have to be careful about shiny objects,
Yes.
um, because many of us probably remember Vine. And if you don't, that's okay. Some of us will probably remember hearing about MySpace.
Yes.
So shiny objects can distract us, especially technology shiny objects. Many things, come with the lure or allure that it's, the next best thing and get in while it's early and, all of that. And they can detract us away from things
Yeah.
and the things that are important. I just had this conversation with one of my clients the other day. She was working to build something for lead generation. And I said, have you contacted everyone on your list that you know? Well, first of all, have you made a list and have you contacted everyone on your list that you know just to reach out and say hi, just to check in, just to, no. And I said, that's probably where you're going to get the most business. So like this flashy lead gen tool was
Yeah.
great. And if you can build it and also reach out and have conversations with people, that's great. But I think the conversations and the outreach were going to definitely help her accomplish her goals much faster than a tool, than to drive traffic to it and all the things. And
Yes.
maybe it's partly because I'm older and I started business before a lot of those things existed.
Yes.
But I also think that sometimes some old fashioned things seem to work a little bit better. Um, and I also think that people at the end of the day tend to appreciate when people have a conversation with them versus just sending a message or just sending an email. I don't know. Maybe I'm just,
I
you know,
know.
wishful thinking, but I do believe that.
Right. The connection, that's the one thing that technology will never be able to replace.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
still not the
Yeah.
same.
No, no, no. And I think when we connect with people, I think that's another way of being open. We hear things in a conversation or in a video that we don't when we're sending a message to someone, whether it's a text or an email or comment on one of the platforms.
Yes. Agreed. Um, the I'm curious if you want to share in some of the changes and the things you've considered making in the last few years in your life, how that openness, like what are the factors you've considered between your family, locations, interests that you have, right? Things that really nurture and give you joy in your life.
Yeah.
You've shared right over the years with me these different opportunities and loves, right, that have come into your awareness. How do you navigate that? What could you share with us about some things you say yes to and some things you say, oh, no, it's too far. It's not
Mm,
right. It's even though it was an opening, maybe it
yeah.
wasn't right because I think that's also part of the learning in openness and being open is it might be open, but it doesn't necessarily mean you want to walk through. It just
Oh,
might
that's
mean
a
you want to consider
really,
it.
yeah, yeah. So it's funny. I do an exercise with clients, and I've done this with them for years. And I have them sit down, and I actually usually encourage them to go outside, leave their phone somewhere else, right? Or at least turn it on silent, and to go sit under a tree if possible and just really sit down and ask themselves some questions. And part of them come back to, what do I really want? What do I want it to look like? How do I want it to feel? Et cetera, et cetera. From there, when an opportunity comes up, you go check in with your partner. That's your partner. Because
Um,
I'll be the first one to admit, I have been swept up by shiny objects that are opportunities more times than I want to admit in this recording. All that to be said, once I started checking in with my partner, and my clients have reported that as well, I'm like, I'm able to pause.
yeah.
I'm able to give myself the space I need. And then I'm able to go back and check in with this thing that I've already spent the time creating that will allow me to know if this is a yes or a no, or do I need more info to be able to answer that question?
Yes, this is very good counsel because I think you're right. There are some old expressions coming to mind. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that the real estate industry has really had some hard shifts in the last 3 years. And so how are people weathering that and what does open look like? And then what are the prices of those opportunities? And then how do you know which ones are right for you? I went to a real estate conference in February in Fort Lauderdale. The Do More Deals Summit with Aaron Novello and Elite Builders at EXP was wonderful. It was highly innovative. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that real estate agents have opportunities to collaborate with investors, with creative finance, with other ways of helping the client and helping their own business that I was like, wow, I don't think I'd ever been exposed to that before.
yeah,
And how wonderful that is for everyone involved because they got to see that these creative finance investor people have a total parallel universe to the real estate resale agents, and they weren't working together. If it
yeah,
wasn't a regular listing, the agent would walk away, but it didn't necessarily mean that they had to walk away. The investor creative finance people actually need and want the agent.
mm,
And so I
yeah,
was like, wow, that's wonderful for the agents that it's right for.
yeah, yeah,
Right? But that was a be open, creative idea that for many could be a wonderful opportunity. And for others, right, they may prefer to be on a team and be a buyer's agent and show property and help to negotiate a deal and work with a TC and a team leader, right? Like that may be what's right for them. And others, right, want to be solopreneurs and become top producers and prospect their little hearts out and
yeah, yeah,
and do
yeah,
that game. But I think then this, what do you want? What do you need? What do you want to feel like? And really be able to evaluate those opportunities to know which ones resonate with
yeah,
you.
yeah. Y- Years ago, I've been a voracious reader forever, but I read a lot of autobiographies and biographies over the years and listened to
Okay.
a lot in the car, in the old days on tape and then CD. And now, of
Right.
course, everything is Bluetooth. But that to be said, I remember reading Sam Walton's book
Okay.
1,000 years ago. And
Sam Walton,
while
founder of Walmart.
Walmart. Yeah. And as I was reading it, it became very clear. Now, I never aspired to have a business as big as Walmart by any stretch of the imagination. But what I saw was in order to have something big, I needed to sacrifice things that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. And that was my family. And part of the reason that I, at that time, came to work from home and work the business that I did, the TC business, was because in the firm I was at prior to that, I was working 60 hours a week and missing so many opportunities and so many things with my children. So I say that to say, it's good to look up to people and to see what others are doing, but always to check in with yourself. So if you
Yeah.
are that person on a team and you see a solopreneur like killing it, so to speak, that doesn't always mean that what you're doing is like that's the right path for you. This may be the right path for you right now with what's going on in your life, with your goals, your community, what you give back to your community, and all the other things that happen. And I think that book probably is the one that made me realize that the most was, part of what he shares in there is how he never saw his kids. And if he did, it's because they
Right.
were in the back of the station wagon on their way with him to go look at something or negotiate something or do something. Um, and I couldn't do that. I didn't want to do that.
Yes, and I think you also bring up a good point that what might be fitting at one time in life may also not be fitting at another time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can also sort of have a shelf life or
Sure.
an expiration date, right? Where the opportunity was like, yes, this is right, and now that's not so right.
Yeah. That's a
And
really
the
good point.
sacrifice, right, is at what price? And that price was okay to pay then, but maybe not okay. You don't want to pay that price later on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Or the opposite. My kids are gone. They're out of the house. My youngest is 25. I have a granddaughter who lives an hour from us, but I don't see her every day. So, I have a little bit different control over my time than I did back then when they were
Yes.
little and I started my first business.
So in the time we have left, let's talk about some practical sort of daily, what are some small habits, some mindset shifts, some rituals that you would recommend that people could utilize to be open, to stay open, to get open?
Yeah. Um, when I say this one, you'll be like, of course she said this one. Go outside.
Yes.
Go outside. And obviously different times of the year, different locations. That's easier said than done. But go outside. Watch what's happening in your own yard or in your own space. One of my favorite things this time of year is to sit out back and watch the bees flitter from one flower to the other in this spiderwort, which just grows right outside of our back window.
Mm,
Um, it doesn't really take that long, but it's just like it's a way to start my morning by not being on my phone, not thinking about what's ahead,
yeah.
just watching, right? The wind blow the leaves on the tree. Just go outside. Go outside, get some sunshine. Go outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious because I want to make sure people also know about I think it was your second book,
Yeah.
Duct Tape.
Glitter, duct tape, and magic.
There we go. I knew the duct tape and glitter. I forgot about the magic.
Yeah. Glitter, duct tape, and magic. And that's part entrepreneur journey and part here's some things that I did and here's some things I wish I'd done differently. Here's some lessons I learned. Here's a simple to read book that hopefully can help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made.
Well, and I think it too has tactics in it, right? To be able
Yes.
to look at what are some things that people can do every day. I know about keeping a gratitude journal
Yeah.
of thinking about what are the three, the five things that you're grateful for. If you can think of those things potentially even before you open your eyes or
Mhm.
when you are waiting for your coffee to brew, that you really have that in the forefront of your mind, right? And that's certainly something that I have learned in my recovery journey. I'm 23 years sober at the time of this recording, as I say.
Yay.
And that is a daily practice to help stay grounded, to stay present, like watching the bees and being outside, so
Yeah.
that when you stay where your feet are planted, right? Because guilt, shame, and remorse, right, are from the past, and anxiety is when you're thinking about the future, right? So you
Yeah.
want to be in the gift of today, in the present.
Yeah.
Having some affirmations. I learned one in 1991, which is potentially before some of our listeners were born, right? But the affirmation is something wonderful is going to happen to me today.
Yeah.
And it was a big piece of shifting my mindset from, oh no, dread, what's going to happen today? That was a product of many earlier years in my life. And that affirmation, something wonderful is going to happen to me today, repeated over all these years. Often before I would open my eyes, it would cross my mind, shifted it into a joyful anticipation of what could be awaiting in the day,
Yeah.
right? Looking for something to be open about so that you're then looking again for something you can be open to, looking again. And so, what is that expression? What you focus on multiplies.
Multiplies. Yes. Yes. Much like the rooster.
Whose job is to multiply, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so let's look at something fun. We can also so if there was something you wish you had been more open to earlier in your life or career, what would it have been?
I would say taking time off.
Oh, that's good.
Taking time off and like proper time off. Like no checking my phone or minimal one time a day. No email, right? No like, yeah, proper taking time off. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't even good at it when I worked at a law firm and somebody was supposed to cover for me. Um, yeah, I would say taking time off. You know, time is precious. And the older I get, the more, I mean, that's probably like the biggest thing. And I, you know, I've had a lot of great experiences and a lot of wonderful vacations, but they always involved more work than I think that I really needed to do at that time.
Very nice. And it can be done. Cambium can help people if they want to know how to get that organized, but it can be
Absolutely.
done. People can take time off in real estate.
Yeah. Yeah.
The admin and the
It's
agent.
necessary. I think it's necessary, you know, like our bodies can't go all the time without rest. Um, Contrary to popular belief and to what society wants us to do, we can't do it. And I think if I'd have taken more time off, yeah, some things that have crept up in my life over the years wouldn't be where they are health wise.
I get that. I get that. And to complete the sentence, real growth in real estate starts when you're open to.
Possibilities.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
That's very nice. Thank you so much for spending time with me and with all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Really
having me. I
fabulous.
enjoyed this.
I knew this was the right topic for you. It's right, just perfect for you.
Oh, you're
And so,
sweet. Thank you.
so be able to check out if anyone is looking for a wonderful coach to be able to help them with their solo preneur business. MichelleSpalding.com, and we'll put that in the show notes. And then Michelle's books, Road from Contract to Close, Glitter, Duct Tape, and Magic. And then what is the tree book?
Nathaniel's Journey.
Nathaniel's Journey, a beautiful
Yeah.
story about the life of a tree.
Yep.
And I'm sure there will be more to come. Yes,
Always.
always. Thank you,
Thank you for
everybody, for
having me.
listening. Be open and see what that success habit can bring in terms of possibilities in your lives. Thanks. See you next time.